What if I told you the exhaustion you feel every morning, the brain fog that follows you through the day, the slower recovery after even minor injuries, and the feeling that your body is somehow wearing out faster than it should may have nothing to do with getting older? Because the truth is far more disturbing. Right now, deep inside your body, an invisible process may be shutting down your natural ability to heal, regenerate, and repair itself. Not in theory, not metaphorically, literally. And the frightening part is this process can begin years before you notice the symptoms. Most people think stress is emotional, something that exists only in the mind. They believe stress is simply feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or mentally exhausted. So they try to manage it with vacations, meditation apps, breathing exercises, or a few better nights of sleep. But modern biological research tells a completely different story. Stress is not just psychological. Stress is chemical. And when that chemical signal stays active too long, it changes the behavior of your cells themselves. For years working in emergency and preventative medicine, I noticed a pattern I couldn't ignore. Patients with chronic stress almost always showed the same accelerated decline. Their bodies healed slower, their sleep deteriorated, their memory weakened, their immune systems became fragile, their energy collapsed long before old age should have caused it. At first glance, it looked like premature aging. But it wasn't aging alone. It was biological suppression. The culprit was cortisol. Now, cortisol is not your enemy. In fact, you need it to survive. In short bursts, cortisol is protective. It sharpens your awareness during danger. It mobilizes energy. It prepares your body for action. The problem begins when the stress response never fully turns off, because your body was never designed to remain in survival mode for months or years. And when cortisol remains chronically elevated, something devastating begins happening beneath the surface. Your repair systems start shutting down. Most people have no idea that inside their body exists an extraordinary network of stem cells working around the clock to maintain and restore damaged tissues. These cells live in your bone marrow, your muscles, your gut lining, your blood vessels, even your brain. Think of them as your body's private repair army. Every time tissue is damaged, every time inflammation appears, every time cells wear down from daily life, these stem cells receive a signal to respond. They rebuild, they restore, they replace damaged structures with healthy new ones. This is the reason your body survives decades of wear and tear. But chronic cortisol changes that signal completely. Imagine a commander suddenly ordering your repair army to stand down indefinitely. That is essentially what prolonged stress hormones do. Research now shows that elevated cortisol directly suppresses stem cell activation in multiple systems throughout the body. In the brain, it slows the production of new neural cells linked to memory and learning. In the muscles, it interferes with tissue repair and recovery. In the gut, it weakens regeneration of the intestinal lining. In bone marrow, it disrupts the very source of cellular renewal. The result is subtle at first. You feel tired more often. You recover slower. Your motivation fades. Sleep stops feeling restorative. Your thinking becomes cloudy. And eventually, your body begins accumulating damage faster than it can repair it. This is where many people mistakenly believe aging has simply caught up with them. But what if much of what we call aging is actually prolonged biological suppression? That question changed everything for me. Because once researchers began understanding the relationship between cortisol and stem cell activity, another discovery emerged beside it. A discovery connected to a plant medicine used for thousands of years in traditional healing systems. At first, I dismissed it. Like many conventionally trained physicians, I was skeptical of herbal medicine. If something wasn't backed by measurable scientific data, I simply didn't take it seriously. Then I started reading the research. Not wellness blogs, not marketing claims. Actual peer-reviewed studies examining a plant known scientifically as Withania somnifera, what most people know as ashwagandha. And what shocked me wasn't that the herb reduced stress, it was how deeply it interacted with the exact biological systems chronic cortisol was damaging. This root appeared to influence the HPA axis, the hormonal command system that controls cortisol production itself. It appeared to reduce inflammatory signaling linked to cellular aging. And most surprisingly, certain compounds inside the plant appeared to directly support neural regeneration pathways connected to stem cell activity in the brain. That caught my attention immediately, because very few natural compounds demonstrate effects on both sides of the equation at once. Most interventions either reduce stress or support recovery. Very few appear to do both simultaneously. And once I dug deeper into the data, the mechanisms became impossible to ignore. Inside ashwagandha exists a group of biologically active compounds called withanides. These compounds are structurally unique because they interact with stress regulation pathways throughout the nervous and endocrine systems. But one specific compound stood out above the rest: white anolide A. Researchers discovered that this compound could cross the blood-brain barrier and directly influence pathways involved in neural repair and regeneration. And what happened next in laboratory studies stunned researchers. Because under controlled conditions, these compounds appeared to stimulate the growth and differentiation of neural progenitor cells, essentially early-stage brain repair cells responsible for creating new neural tissue. Not metaphorically, not theoretically. Observed directly in measurable biological models. And that's where this conversation becomes far bigger than stress relief. Because what if chronic stress has been silently suppressing your body's repair systems for years? And what if the right intervention could begin reversing that process from the inside out? Most people think aging happens suddenly. They believe one day you simply wake up older, weaker, slower, more forgetful. But biological aging rarely works that way. It happens gradually, silently, through tiny systems failing one after another beneath the surface, long before symptoms become obvious. And one of the biggest drivers of that decline may be something millions of people experience every single day without realizing the damage it's causing: chronic cortisol elevation. Not occasional stress, not temporary anxiety, constant low-grade survival mode. The kind caused by financial pressure, poor sleep, overwork, emotional exhaustion, inflammation, loneliness, processed food, and nonstop stimulation from modern life. Your body interprets all of it as danger. And when danger never seems to end, your biology begins making sacrifices. At first, those sacrifices seem harmless. Your body diverts energy away from long-term repair and towards short-term survival. That makes sense during an emergency. If you're being chased by a threat, regeneration is not the priority. Survival is. But your nervous system cannot tell the difference between a real physical threat and persistent modern stress. To your biology, unpaid bills, sleep deprivation, emotional trauma, and chronic worry all trigger the same hormonal cascade. The hypothalamus signals the pituitary gland. The pituitary activates the adrenal glands, and suddenly cortisol floods the bloodstream. This is called the HPA axis, the hormonal command center controlling your stress response. When functioning correctly, it turns on during stress and shuts off afterward. But under chronic stress, the system malfunctions. The accelerator gets stuck, and that changes everything. Because elevated cortisol does far more than affect mood. It directly alters the environment your stem cells live in. Remember, stem cells are your repair reserve. They maintain tissues, replace damaged cells, and preserve organ function over time. But stem cells are extremely sensitive to their surroundings. When inflammation rises, when oxidative stress increases, when cortisol remains chronically elevated, these cells stop functioning normally. It's similar to trying to rebuild a city during a constant state of emergency. Construction crews exist, but resources are redirected elsewhere. Repair work slows down. Damage accumulates faster than restoration can keep up. Nowhere is this more dangerous than in the brain. One of the first regions affected by chronic cortisol exposure is the hippocampus, the part of the brain heavily involved in memory, emotional regulation, and learning. Researchers have repeatedly observed that prolonged stress shrinks hippocampal volume over time. Think about that carefully. Stress is not simply changing how you feel emotionally. It may physically change the structure of your brain itself. This explains why people under chronic stress often experience forgetfulness, poor concentration, emotional instability, and mental fatigue long before old age. Their neural repair systems are being suppressed. Even more alarming, studies show elevated cortisol interferes directly with neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons from neural stem cells. In healthy conditions, your brain continuously generates fresh neural connections. This process supports learning, adaptability, emotional resilience, and cognitive sharpness. But under chronic stress, those regenerative pathways begin shutting down. And here's the frightening part. Most people never notice it happening until years later. They simply assume they are getting older. But many of those changes may actually be the biological consequences of prolonged cortisol exposure. This is why researchers became so interested in compounds capable of protecting neural stem cells from stress-related suppression. And this is where ashwagandha began attracting serious scientific attention. Not because it was trendy, not because it was ancient, but because laboratory research started revealing something highly unusual. Certain compounds inside the root appeared capable of influencing both stress hormone regulation and neural regeneration pathways simultaneously. That combination is extremely rare. Researchers isolated withanolide A, one of the primary active compounds in ashwagandha, and began testing it in controlled laboratory environments. What they observed surprised even experienced neuroscientists. The compound appeared to stimulate neurite outgrowth, essentially encouraging damaged nerve cells to regrow communication branches called axons and dendrites. These structures are critical because they allow neurons to transmit information throughout the brain. Without them, cognitive performance weakens. Memory suffers. Communication between brain regions slows down. But the effects didn't stop there. Further studies showed that these compounds also influenced neural progenitor cells, immature cells capable of becoming new neurons under the right conditions. In simple terms, researchers observed signs that the brain's repair machinery was becoming active again. And importantly, this happened while cortisol regulation improved at the same time. That matters because regeneration cannot fully occur while the body remains trapped in survival mode. You cannot heal efficiently while stress chemistry dominates your biology. This is why so many people feel stuck in cycles of exhaustion and decline. They try to improve energy with stimulants. They try to force productivity. They rely on caffeine, sugar, and willpower. But the deeper issue is often biological suppression of repair systems themselves. Your body isn't lazy. It's prioritizing survival over regeneration. And unless that hormonal signal changes, true recovery becomes difficult. This also explains why sleep becomes so critical. Deep sleep is when much of your repair activity occurs. Growth hormone rises, cellular cleanup processes activate, stem cell signaling increases, neural restoration accelerates, but cortisol and restorative sleep oppose each other directly. If cortisol remains elevated at night, your body struggles to enter the deepest stages of repair. You may sleep for 8 hours and still wake up exhausted because the quality of regeneration never fully occurred. Researchers studying ashwagandha noticed another important effect here. Participants using standardized extracts showed measurable improvements in sleep quality alongside reductions in cortisol levels. Not simply feeling calmer, actual physiological changes in stress hormone regulation. And once sleep improves, repair capacity often improves with it. This creates a powerful chain reaction. Lower cortisol supports better sleep. Better sleep supports stem cell activity. Improved stem cell activity enhances recovery. Better recovery reduces overall biological stress. The system begins moving out of survival mode and back toward restoration. That shift can profoundly affect how the body ages over time. Because aging is not only about the passage of years, it is also about the balance between damage and repair. When damage consistently exceeds repair, degeneration accelerates. But when repair systems remain active, resilient, and protected, the body maintains function far longer than most people expect. And this may explain why some individuals remain mentally sharp, physically strong, and emotionally resilient deep into later decades of life, while others decline much earlier. The difference is often hidden in the biology of recovery itself. Here's what makes this conversation so important. Most compounds in medicine work through a single pathway. One drug lowers blood pressure. Another affects inflammation. Another influences sleep or mood. But very few substances appear to interact with multiple major repair systems in the body simultaneously. That's why researchers became increasingly fascinated with ashwagandha. Because once scientists began isolating its active compounds and testing them under controlled conditions, they discovered something unusual. This root wasn't simply calming people down. It appeared to influence several interconnected biological systems tied directly to aging, recovery, and regeneration at the same time. And when those systems begin working together again, the effects can become profound. Let's break down the 4 major mechanisms researchers have focused on most. The first mechanism is neural stem cell activation. This is arguably the most remarkable finding. Inside the brain exists a population of neural progenitor cells, essentially early-stage repair cells capable of becoming functioning neurons under the right conditions. For years, scientists believed adults could not significantly regenerate brain tissue. The assumption was that once neurons were lost, they were gone permanently. But newer neuroscience changed that understanding completely. We now know the adult brain retains limited but very real regenerative potential. The problem is, chronic stress suppresses it. Elevated cortisol creates a hostile environment for neurogenesis, especially inside the hippocampus. That's why prolonged stress often correlates with memory decline, emotional instability, slower learning, and cognitive fatigue. But laboratory studies involving withanolide A revealed something unexpected. Researchers observed enhanced neurite growth and increased activity in neural progenitor pathways under controlled conditions. In simpler language, the compound appeared to help activate dormant repair signals in brain cells. Think about how extraordinary that is. A natural compound influencing the very systems responsible for neural repair. This doesn't mean magic. It doesn't mean immortality. But it does suggest the brain may be far more adaptable and repairable than most people realize, especially when the stress environment suppressing those systems begins changing. The second mechanism involves the HPA axis itself. Remember, the HPA axis is your body's central stress command system. When stress appears, this system activates cortisol production. But under chronic pressure, the axis becomes dysregulated. The body loses its ability to properly shut the response off. That's why many people feel wired but exhausted. Their nervous system is overstimulated while their energy systems are depleted. Ashwagandha appears to help regulate this feedback loop. Clinical trials measuring blood cortisol levels found participants taking standardized ashwagandha extract experienced significant reductions in circulating cortisol over time. And this matters enormously because lowering cortisol doesn't simply reduce stress feelings. It removes the suppression signal placed on repair systems throughout the body. The body finally receives permission to exit survival mode. That's when restoration can begin. This is why many users report not just feeling calmer, but recovering better, sleeping deeper, and maintaining steadier energy during the day. Their biology is shifting away from constant emergency signaling. The third mechanism may surprise many people: hormonal restoration. Most people think testosterone is only about masculinity or physical performance. But biologically, testosterone plays a much larger role. It directly influences muscle repair, bone maintenance, motivation, energy production, and even cognitive function. More importantly, testosterone activates satellite cells, specialized muscle stem cells, responsible for rebuilding and repairing tissue after stress or exercise. But chronic cortisol suppresses testosterone production. This creates a devastating trade-off inside the body. Under prolonged stress, the body sacrifices anabolic repair in favor of survival chemistry. In other words, your body stops prioritizing rebuilding. This explains why chronically stressed individuals often experience muscle loss, slower recovery, fatigue, reduced resilience, and declining physical performance even without major illness. Now here's where the research becomes fascinating. Several studies examining standardized ashwagandha extracts found measurable improvements in testosterone levels, recovery markers, and physical performance capacity. In one controlled trial involving chronically stressed men, participants taking ashwagandha experienced significant increases in testosterone, alongside major improvements in sperm count and stress resilience. Another study found faster muscle recovery and measurable performance improvements after supplementation. This suggests the herb may support anabolic restoration by reducing the hormonal suppression caused by chronic stress. Again, not magic. Biology. When cortisol decreases, recovery systems function more efficiently again. The fourth mechanism may be the most overlooked of all: inflammation control. Specifically, suppression of a powerful inflammatory signaling molecule known as NF-kappa B. Now, this part is critical because stem cells don't operate in isolation. They live inside what scientists call a stem cell niche, essentially the microenvironment surrounding them. And the condition of that environment determines whether stem cells remain active or become dormant. Chronic inflammation creates a toxic environment around those cells. Imagine trying to rebuild a city while smoke and fire constantly surround the construction zone. The repair crews exist, but the environment prevents them from functioning effectively. That's what chronic inflammation does biologically. NF-kappa B is one of the major drivers of this inflammatory signaling cascade. And researchers found compounds in ashwagandha appear to suppress this pathway significantly. That matters because reducing inflammatory signaling improves the environment surrounding repair cells throughout the body. When combined with lower cortisol levels, the body becomes dramatically more favorable for regeneration and recovery. Now pause for a moment and think about what these four mechanisms represent together. Neural regeneration support, stress hormone regulation, anabolic hormone restoration, inflammatory suppression. These are not isolated systems. They interact continuously. And when they become dysregulated simultaneously, biological aging accelerates rapidly. But when they begin functioning properly again, the body often becomes far more resilient than expected. This may explain why some individuals appear to age slowly despite difficult lives, while others deteriorate quickly under prolonged stress. The difference often lies in how effectively their repair systems remain protected over time. And this brings us to another critical realization. Most people wait until symptoms become severe before they pay attention. They wait until memory declines noticeably, until exhaustion becomes overwhelming, until sleep collapses, until recovery disappears. But by then, years of suppression may already be affecting multiple systems throughout the body. That's why understanding these mechanisms matters now before deeper degeneration occurs. Because your body is constantly responding to the signals you create daily. Every night of poor sleep, every month of chronic stress, every cycle of inflammation and exhaustion, your biology adapts accordingly. But the opposite is also true. When you begin changing the hormonal environment inside your body, when cortisol decreases, when inflammation lowers, when sleep improves, when repair systems reactivate, your biology adapts in that direction too. And according to emerging research, that process may be far more reversible than most people have been taught to believe. Here's the most important thing I want you to remember. Your body was designed to heal. The exhaustion, the brain fog, the slow recovery, the feeling that your body is breaking down faster than it should, these may not be permanent signs of aging. They may be signals that your repair systems have been suppressed for too long by chronic stress and elevated cortisol. And the encouraging part is this: biological suppression can often be reversed. Modern research is now confirming what ancient medicine understood thousands of years ago, that certain natural compounds can help the body restore balance, reduce stress chemistry, improve recovery, and reactivate the systems responsible for repair and resilience. But consistency matters. No supplement can outwork chronic sleep deprivation, constant stress, poor nutrition, and inflammation. Real healing happens when multiple systems begin working together again. Your sleep, your hormones, your nervous system, your recovery pathways, your daily habits. That is where true regeneration begins. And maybe the most powerful realization of all is this: your future health is not decided only by your age or genetics. It is shaped every single day by the signals you give your biology. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next science-backed health deep dive.